Okay, could I have a motion to approve the agenda, which is very sketchy, because basically it's informational on our groups. Just a motion anyway to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Second. Thank you. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Public comment. There's public comment actually before and after. But, morning, Todd. Anyone have any public comment at this time? Okay, hearing none. I would just like to open our meeting. We had a meeting Wednesday to address the two issues that we're talking about today, which is specifically the South Washington project and request for 3D scanning for that project. We decided in the best interest of this board to hold another meeting, which is sort of informational again, to review the project and answer any unanswered questions. What I would really like to do, two things. If after the presentation there aren't any questions and everyone seems satisfied with where we're at, I would like someone to entertain a motion to approve the project. If there's not that comfort level, then we end up scheduling another meeting, but keeping in mind that we're holding the city hostage and the project hostage until we make a decision.
I guess I...
Barry, I'm speaking, please. Thank you. The other thing I would like to do is just sort of take a little walk through history. On Washington Street in 2005, there was a huge CDBG grant, Community Development Block Grant, that paid for paving Washington, burying all of the utilities, and putting in new light posts. So there has been progress. What I'm trying to do is lay the groundwork. There's been progress on improving the entire north side Washington Street. Ted Ahrens has done private fundraising for enhancing Veterans Park. And it's just sort of, I guess, me sharing the fact that that has been an important part of the DDA district for a long time, and that corner. And the only other thing I have to say is that DDAs were established initially as a way to finance public infrastructure projects using TIF money. And somehow, I think through the years, we have focused more on beautification, streetscapes, but initially, that was the primary goal. That's my spiel, very okay. I just wanted to sort of set what I see as a groundwork.
I understand. I guess I just objected to your use of the term holding the project hostage.
But it's semantics, it's the way I feel.
I understand.
Okay.
As chair, just, I mean, that I don't believe we are holding the project hostage.
Okay. Yes.
Especially in light of city council's schedule that Mitch told us last week. We need a decision by, I think it was the 27th or 28th, for the next agenda for council for the first part of September, I believe, right? So we've got some time to make an informed, intelligent decision on this project.
Okay, so I apologize, I take off my hat as chair and as a board member. Okay, that maybe that was a strong statement. Well, I accept this.
No,
Strike it from the record, Eric. All right, then if there's no other comment by board members, we'll turn the meeting over to T.
For comments and questions from the board.
I just asked. And I do think everyone needs to be out of here by noon, because they all, right, at least by noon. T and Rachel?
Sherry, is the Are we listening to the entire presentation again, or is this just going to be question and answer?
Well, let's ask he what he has. Is that all
Whichever
right?
you want. I have the presentation that we gave to the work session of the council last week, or I guess it was this week. No,
It's
last week.
Tuesday.
This is a work session.
Yeah. And I was going to quickly go through most of it. There are some items that may be of no interest or repetitive, but if there is anything in particular that you want to ask, I can go straight to those slides. I do not have any new material or so.
All of us were at your Tuesday meeting other than Valerie, so I guess it would be up to Valerie if she wants to hear it.
I don't know that I necessarily need to hear it. I mean, I obviously, I know it's on the slides.
So maybe we can just do a Q&A.
Just do question
Sure.
and answer.
Sure, as we need certain information, we can do that particular slide.
Right.
Yeah. Actually, let me do this. Let me pull my copy of the presentation, which I don't have, but so I can go straight there. That's okay. I think I know where they are. So where do you want to start?
I'd like to just ask a very basic question, and that's just an overview of the project, meaning what, from the redevelopment of the two structures, what the end result is going to be. I know it's a mixture of condominiums, some not low income, I forget what the term you used is, housing, some retail space. How many square feet, parking spaces, just kind of that big overview of what are we investing in here, what is going to be the result. It's just kind of a starting point.
I believe there is.
You trying to blow that up?
Yeah, from current slide. Okay. There are currently 2 buildings on 4 tax parcels. This is the, let's go to this. This parcel here is the River Park where it has the River Park building. These 1, 2, 3 parcels is where the North Channel Outlet building is. The 2 buildings The River Park building is about 22,000 square feet, and this is targeted currently for market rate residential condominiums. And it's going to be between 16 to 18 units, different sizes, from larger ones, say here, and here to smaller units in the ground level and on the second floor. In addition to that, on the back side of the north side of the first floor, currently, or the original plan, anticipated having 8 double-sized garages. We're looking at converting the end garages, which will be behind here and behind here, into commercial office spaces, and that is going to depend on the outcome of discussions with the state concerning the ability to receive a light elimination grant with or without commercial spaces. The MEDC has been promoting mixed-use developments where we have residential, commercial, retail. This building originally was going to be commercial, all rentals. The plan has changed in the last year, and we're now looking at doing all private condominiums. However, in order to qualify for the MEDC grant for blight elimination, we may have to convert some of the spaces on the north side of the first floor into commercial. That is to still be determined. If not, then those spaces would be single car garages, so we're going to have altogether 8 garages. We'll also, if I were to go back to the previous slide, to this slide here. This is the space between the empty space between the 2 buildings. We're looking at putting carports along the north side of this space, and as part of the development of the North Channel building, also put carports to the west of the building. Okay? So that's for the River Park Place building. The North Channel building is made up actually of 2 buildings, the 3-story and the current 2-story building. This used to be 3 stories. It was demolished years back, and now we have 2 stories remaining. The south wall of this building and the north wall of the building currently do not have any real windows. These were openings that they did following the demolition of the building that used to be here. I have a photograph later on that shows the entire building back in the 50s. It was one continuous building that started from the river and went all the way north to 5th Avenue. Over the years, they demolished the building that is between the current North Channel building and where the River Park building is. Later, they demolished the portion of the old building where River Park is now, and then eventually they demolished the buildings that were north of the North Channel. So as part of the development, and that is subject to the outcome of discussions with the State Historic Preservation Office, we will need to put windows on this side and on the north wall in order to accommodate putting units, residential, commercial units. This building has pretty much the same space, 21,000 square feet. And the plan currently for the first floor of the entire building, which is about 8,000 square feet, is to have 2, maybe 3 retail businesses. And as we mentioned last week, the effort right now is to bring in a brewing type of operation. We've been talking with 2 different entities that's interested in locating and operating there. We're interested, essentially on behalf of everybody, for a year-round operation where it's not just a microbrew for, which most likely will be on this side. The first operation will be on this side of the building. We like to have more than just a tasting room for primarily the summer, but have a year-round brewing operation where the beer will be transported, produced and transported off-site, so that we have year-round jobs and activity. That desire, and both parties we have been talking with are interested in doing just that. That necessitated having trucks coming in from the back side to the back side of the building to deliver and to take out finished product. And that is because prior to acquiring this property, there was no access to the back of the building because the lot to the north and to the west were under different ownership. So essentially it was the lot that goes behind to the north and west of the building and west of the River Park. And then this property here was part of the River Park property. So there was no access to the back of the building. We were looking at potentially demolishing this building in order to provide access and then have a brewing operation on the first floor of the 3-story building. So that is the reason that with the acquisition of this building, the development team also acquired the surrounding property. So now we have pretty much unlimited access to any part of this building for whatever operations we end up having there. So for the first floor, we're looking at least one business here, another business here, and potentially a third space that may not be a business, may be a non-profit that would then utilize a space between the 2 businesses for cultural and other activities. But that still is to be determined. At this point, we're looking for at least the 2 commercial businesses. The second floor, which will be for both sections of the building, we have about 8,000 square feet, and we're looking at converting that space to 8 apartments, 1-bedroom apartments, through partially funded through a grant from the Michigan Housing Development Authority, and where the grant will contribute about $25,000 towards the rehabilitation of this space, whose rehabilitation is going to be about a little over $1 million. And these apartments, they will be controlled rent. So it will be for tenants who are at or below the 80% of the area median income, which for right now is about 34,000 a year in income. Those are apartments similar to what we have several of those downtown. That they started, Mitch, when was it that Vanessa was doing a bunch of those apartments?
Coach said 03,
8 years,
04,
yeah.
05.
It was about 10 years ago. And there are at least 3 buildings that I know, and I understand that through the county planning department, there are also additional buildings where the upstairs, the downtown where the upstairs is being rehabilitated through this program. This program requires that if they are assisted by the state, that they stay under control rent for up to 5 years. And after that, can be rented at market rate or sold as condominiums. It will be up to the owner at that time. The third floor, which would be this part here, about 5,000 square feet, would support 6 market rate apartments for rent. Those are, we're looking at primarily 1 bedroom. They may be able to put 1 2-bedroom apartments. Yes, sir.
Any of that would be subsidized residential? Or considered-
Subsidized as of the 60% of the median? The answer is no. The rents are not subsidized. The apartments would be rehabilitated with a grant from the state. However, it would be, they would be owned by the developer, and they would be rented to people that meet the 80% area median income. Okay, so the developer would be, or the owner of these apartments would be renting to people, but for someone to rent, they have to have the 80% AMI income
The two
for up to 5 years or until the first tenant moves out.
The 2 group hubs that you approached, are they aware of the development above?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. Sure.
And those are Michigan, not Section 8 subsidized.
No.
Or HUD?
No.
Right.
No.
Are the group hubs, are they actually group hubs, or are they full micro groups, or are they, because there's a difference between a group hub and a micro group? Because a group hub will have actually a restaurant serving food in it.
Yes. They desired for at least one of the brewing operation is to have a, it's not going to be a full service restaurant, but have, you know, sandwiches, hors d'oeuvres.
Yeah.
At least that's what they're looking at this time. The second operation, the other potential brewing operation, they may not have the eating component. Both of them, however, have expressed interest in having some entertainment. Can we proceed then? Oh, yeah, there's.
And this really goes back to kind of the other building, but the GDA city, the community has, over the last 20-some years, invested heavily in the riverfront, with the river walk and et cetera. And it seems like this project isn't really taking advantage of the fact that it's on the river. Because I heard rumors through the grapevine that there were going to be, the first floor of the other building was going to be utilized potentially, and that the fact that it's on the river was going to be taken into account, as a value. But I don't see that in this final version. Is there a reason that?
Well,
because I think one of the things we all feel we lack is good things on this asset that we have, that's the river, whether it be dining or other things, and now we seem to have a project that's not going to utilize the river.
Well, I wouldn't say that.
Well,
Let's look at this.
I wanted you to talk
Sure,
about that.
sure. Actually, if this property was not on the river and having the benefits of being on the river, they would not have acquired the property. That is the reason.
I understand why this
Yeah,
makes
yeah.
a condominium development
Actually,
more
it's
useful,
necessary.
but-
So, I wish I had another, well, I think the last, well, first of all, right here, this will be condos. And those will be the elevation, the current elevation of the land is about here, which is just above the river, which is approximately here. Right at this level in front of the apartments, there is space like for porches and so on. At this elevation here, right now there is a wall, and that goes kind of across. And then when the new sewer, which by the way goes under the building, that's part of the reason it has to be rerouted and replaced. In order to put the sewer, they're going to have to put a seawall here all the way out. And then the sewer will go inside that seawall, and then it would be capped above. So at this level, approximately, there will be another flat surface, which eventually can be a part of a north side riverwalk, because the city owns so much, or controls so much property from the west side of the Harbor View parking lot, all the way to, US 31, with couple easements on private properties, way to the west. So yes, these here utilize, this whole project counts on the benefits that being on the river would be. Otherwise, I can tell you that the numbers, the sales could not support, if it was somewhere else, could not support its redevelopment.
I understand what you just said,
Yeah.
but I don't think you really
I think you
understood
meant
my question.
We meant commercial space.
What he was looking at, I think at one point there was a thought, there was a proposal, I think, that the commercial space was gonna come all the way to the river.
No. There was at one time, and I had to go to the history of this. The Manistee Investment Partners acquired this property first. And at that time, there was interest by someone, a group that wanted to acquire the North Channel Outlet building and put a brewery there. However, that building was too big and the project would be too big for them. So they decided not to do it. They were looking at other parts of the city. They were looking at a couple of other communities. John Gruthies, the owner of the building, at that time offered them to take part of the first floor and the ground level of the River Park building and put the brewery and the brew pub there. in order to keep them in the downtown there. Later, when the North Channel property was acquired, then they went back to the original plan, which was they're now interested in acquiring a portion of the North Channel outlet building, which I showed you before. That would be the south portion of the first floor to do the brewery, because then they would have access for the trucks from the north side, from the Fifth Avenue. Okay? So at this point, there are no, and I do not foresee any change in the plans for this building. The only change may be that the size of two of the units becomes smaller, and we end up with 18 units. They also, there is a interest also to add another, to go up with another section of the building and have 2 units up on top. However, they're not, those are maybe future plans subject to approvals from Historic District Commission, Planning Commission, and everybody else. And it's just a thought. But what we're proceeding with is this part.
The reason I was asking is that I think that the riverfront is very strategically important to the DDA and the city, and projects that enhance it, which you're doing to a certain extent, but in some ways in a way that brings people into that riverfront. We've had many discussions about how do we get along our existing river walk, the backside of the existing buildings. It's a catch-22. People aren't going to go there unless there's something for them to do there. But there's nothing, people aren't going to invest in things to do there until there's people that are going there.
Yep.
And it seems that this potentially could have been an opportunity in a key intersection of the city to kind of foster that foot traffic from a commercial standpoint. But it decides, for whatever reason, it sounds you decided that you're going to take that a little bit further off of the river on the behind building. I just wanted to understand that. If there's anything you could add to the decision process on that, I mean, ultimately, it's, as a developer, it's your project.
Well,
but it just, from an overall DDA fitting in line with our goals.
well, let me address that. The building is where it is. I mean, we're stuck with it. Because the previous developer that started and went bankrupt had his own ideas about what this thing was going to look like. We do not believe that it's financially feasible as he conceived it, and that's why we changed it. Now, someone asked me last week why we included this parcel, why we included this parcel. And I told you some of the reasons. One of the reasons for this, for looking at this whole thing together is the DDA study a few years ago. It was called by Beckett and Redder on the North Washington corridor. Essentially, it starts from the bridge and goes all the way up to Hotel Northern. And a component of that study was what to do to enhance this area here. And they had produced some renderings that shows streetscape along here, some improvements in the enhancements on the west side of Veterans Memorial Park. So that was in the back of our minds when we included this parcel in the overall plan because it has the opportunity to benefit from the tax increment financing that would be created by this. And also, it provides parking, open parking, when we did not have this building under control. Now, of course, with all of the space, there's more than adequate on-site parking. Actually, it's about 1 3/4 cars per unit that really is not required. This being the downtown, people can park wherever. Now, going west, we included the city property for 2 reasons. One, because of it has the future potential for development if the city decides to dispose of it and someone acquires the property and they build something, then this property can generate TIF that will go towards the overall brownfield plant project. Second reason is that when the city replaces the sewer that comes along like at the edge of the river, partially hanging above the water, and it goes across kind of like this, and then it goes under the building. And somehow the original developer put the building over the sewer. And I don't know the history of that, I don't remember the history of that, but bottom line is that that cannot happen, so it will have to be rerouted, replaced. In the process of putting the sewer, in order to do that, it will be, how you call it, a retaining wall, a sheet pile, that then will come across kind of like that, if I understand correctly. And then the area above the sewer will be backfilled, and then that can then eventually be converted into a river walk, for which actually the owner of the property has provided the city with an easement. And then that river walk then would connect with the existing river walk that goes up to about here, and also could have access, including within ADA access to Washington, thus connecting the existing river walk with a new and enhanced river walk here. So and this has been, I know I've been hearing about this for 10 years since I moved here. And so that is also part of the reasons for including all these parcels to the river, to the brownfield plan, to the TIF plan. Did that answer your question?
It did, and it raised more questions.
Sure, that's fine.
You talk about this DDA study,
Yes.
and I guess I'd like to point out that the DDA board has never seen this study. It was conducted, I think, we authorized it, but we've never seen the results of it at the board level. I know the committees probably,
Which study?
The North Washington corridor.
But that was how long ago, Joe?
3 years ago, 2 or 3 years ago.
so more than half the board wasn't even on the board at that time. Those of us that were, I've never seen this study. You know much more about it than I do.
I've read it.
And I find it interesting that you're using this study that I've never seen to justify things. And it sounds as if, well, DDA's been on board with this. Well, no, we haven't, because we've never, at the board level, seen or been part of that process.
Well-
What you do for.
Well, and we have a new board,
Yes.
but, so both of those factors come into play.
Well,
And
I'd like to address that, Barry. You said justify. I disagree. We're not trying to justify anything. We're trying to facilitate the enhancements to this area by including these properties, and we can only include eligible properties.
No, I
Okay.
understand.
And secondly, without even being a member of the DDA, and at the time, not even a member of the ER committee, that plan had several open meetings in this room where they presented, Reader and Baker, there. They presented their plan in at least 2 sessions that I've seen, and I have seen, actually, I do have a copy of that report that Travis, at the time, was your director, made it available. And I don't know to whom, but I got it both from Travis and from AES. So I was not aware that not everybody's familiar with that, but anyway, it is there, and whether you're going to undertake all of the recommendations that were in the plan, that's for you to decide. But this allows you to use TIF that would be generated from the 2 properties to do whatever needs to be
Actually,
done.
it allows the city to use TIF generated from these properties to do these things.
And the DDA.
It doesn't
And-
allow.
Absolutely.
The DDA is not part of that at that point.
Well, the DDA,
I mean, other than
Yeah.
in a participatory sense, because it would not be coming out of DDA budget.
okay, let me go back to the Brownfield Act allows any party, private or public, to undertake eligible redevelopment activities. Eligible redevelopment activities are environmental, remediation, abatement, demolition, public infrastructure, and site preparation. Okay? Sometimes, depending on the community, depending on the specifics of a project, the developer does all of that, or a brownfield authority, or a city, or a DDA can undertake all of those eligible activities, pay for them upfront by whatever means, and then get reimbursed through TIF. Or in most cases, the work is split between the private developer, the city, a DDA, or a BRA, a brownfield authority. It's just a matter of who has the ability to finance projects at that time. So whether the DDA or the city does any of this work, that party can be reimbursed through tax increments that will be generated from those 2 properties, and in the event that this parcel is redeveloped, from this parcel as well. Okay? Now, if down the road, the city, the DDA, whoever owns this parcel, sells part of this parcel, and someone puts a private development there, then that private development also will generate TIF that can be used for the whole plan as it is conceived now.
So what you just described about the DDA could have a role my understanding as to what has been proposed is essentially a development agreement between the project developers, Brownfield, and the city.
Correct.
The DDA was not contemplated being part of that agreement. If that were the case, is what is proposed, and 2 years from now, we said, okay, extending the Riverwalk or streetscape to this area is now part of our priority, could we be added to that at that time? Or would that be an amendment to the Brownfield plan, in which case we need to have that decided now?
Okay, would, under this scenario, it depends, under this scenario, would the DDA then fund some of these activities? If it is, then yes, it will have to be, we'll have to amend the development agreement. We will not have to amend the Brownfield plan.
Because the Brownfield plan.
The Brownfield plan is generic.
But it explicitly does mention the
city,
city
right
and
now,
the
yeah.
developer. It
But-
does not mention the DDA.
No, but the city,
But
the
other parties
DDA,
could come into
yeah,
play.
the DDA, though being a part of the city or an entity of the city, yes, can be included.
Okay.
I don't believe we'll need, let me think if I have it. No, we will not need an amendment to the plan, but
But
we would need an
potentially
amendment to the development agreement if someone is going to put in some money and want to be reimbursed.
Okay, we've
Patrick,
already
pause.
gone through an hour, so I just want to keep us on track.
The actual conceptual idea of what the money is to be spent on has to be decided now. But exactly what the money is to be spent on, when that time comes, the DDA could be involved in that.
Yes. Now, let me explain one issue here. As soon as the Brownfield plan is acted upon by, assuming it's approved by the city council, which is required by the act, the local unit of government has to approve the TIF plan, the Brownfield plan and the TIF plan, after the Brownfield Authority approves it. We have to submit to the state, to the DEQ and the MEDC, the Act 381 work plan, which is a more detailed plan where if we say that we're going to put the water main currently is needed to go from the east side of Washington, from here, and the city has, the owner here has provided the city with an easement to go across the back of this property, to bring in a water main, and then we'll look into the existing water main on Short Street or 6th Avenue, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So when the Act 381 work plan, we'll have to explain the size of that water main, the length, and the cost, and the reason for doing that, in order for the state to approve capture of state taxes. Similarly, everything else that is any of the eligible activities that are in the plan right now, and let me go to the list of this. Okay, let's cut through this. Okay, these are eligible redevelopment activities within the property. So when we describe all these activities, we have to give quantities, justification, and unit rates and total cost. Similarly, for the public infrastructure, we're going to have to quantify, explain, justify why they're needed. Okay? That, what we put here, the activities that we described here in the 3-in-1 work plan stay. And if we need to change them, we have to amend the brownfield plan, the 3-in-1 work plan, development agreement, and so on. Now, the 381 work plan does not want a lot of details about whether the city or the developer or the DDA or another party do this particular activity. So down the road, there can be an agreement or a discussion with the city and actually with the developer for undertaking any of these activities. But at this point, to this point, I have not heard any offer by any public entity to fund any of the activities on the property, only the public infrastructure. And normally that's how it's done. In many communities, the city may do some of that, the DDA may do something else. Depends on who has or can get the funding to do this work at the time that it's needed.
I find it ironic that to get state approval for their part of the TIF capture, you need to provide details on all these projects, but to get our approval, it wasn't deemed necessary to give us the same level of information.
That's correct. The brownfield plan is a generic plan. It describes the activities and cost estimates. In the Act 381 work plan, we have to give more detail. Now, that being said, in order to come up with the estimates for this, we have more detailed estimates that the city, and actually it was Abelmar's 2 years ago, that prepared some more detailed estimates for each of those items. And those, I would think, are available to anybody who wants them.
I recognize fully that we have new board members on the board, but I think it's important to recognize that the city and the DDA have talked about this project for well over 2 years, which is prior to Patrick coming on board. I'm not sure when Rachel stepped on that's probably prior to you, Rachel. But I mean, we had, Jeff and I were just talking, we've had multiple conversations with Jeff at the chair at that time and Travis as the executive director on this particular project. So I don't want anyone to have the impression that this project had not been discussed. I just think that would be the false impression. I wouldn't want to give that to you. Now, not to say that I should not have been better in tune to transitions, which were occurring, and doing a better job of communicating those particular projects and things that we're working on. I think that's obviously a two-way street, obviously. But I think it's really important to recognize that this project has been discussed for a long time, not only with the city, but the DDA, and at the detailed level, the very minutiae detailed level, those discussions have been occurring. That was it.
Chair, you have to excuse me, I need to get some water.
Jeff?
I'm losing my.
It's just that this, and that point is exactly true and well taken, because I understood that, because I'm probably the newest one on here.
Sure.
The only thing is that this new board is being asked to support this. We're just
Absolutely.
trying to,
I completely get it.
trying to learn.
In Todd, I think that's
I didn't know about this until a
Yeah.
week ago.
And
for
Todd, that's
myself,
where I'm
so.
thinking that probably should have done, and that's where I'm saying for myself, I could have done a much better job in recognizing that transition that was occurring. And so that was my point on that. I should have done a better job in that transition to ensure that That information is communicated.
I have a question. Jeff?
If I could just make one other point, a lot of those cost estimates were put together as a result of interested parties looking to purchase the property, and what would it cost to do this, and if there's gonna need to be enhancement to the sewer, what does that need to be, and if we wanted to upgrade the street out front to help with the project. So a lot of those cost estimates have been done over the years, every time somebody was looking at the building. And so we had a lot of that information when this team came together and were able to just provide it.
You know, one other question I'm just curious about is that the developer that's going to be doing this, what is the background and or the track record of this developer as far as other projects that they can do? Because this property has a history of failure for many years. So just out of curiosity's sake, you know, I've never heard of John Grothuis before.
Yeah.
And what he's done or accomplished, or, you know, if they have a financial ability to do so. I mean, I'm sure you guys have done your background and, you know, your homework and everything to know that, but as a board member, I'm just curious as to, you know, some of the.
That's a very fair question. When the original developer in 2005, 2006,
2005.
started with the River Park. At the time, I was with the company, and I did a brownfield plan that was approved by the county brownfield authority at the time. I very clearly remember having discussions with the developer about the ability to market the project the way they were proposing it. They decided to go ahead and do it. When John Grothuis and his group acquired the River Park, I didn't know them. Mitch knew them from being in Grand Haven because John was in the banking industry and for many years. And but I had to do my own due diligence to see would they pay me, would they be able to do the project, and based on my research and my knowledge of who they are now, I feel comfortable that they've done a lot of commercial. They developed a lot of commercial properties. They have not developed a brownfield project like this. And that's the reason that I'm working with them to ensure that, one, they understand what is involved, that everything is done in accordance with state law and local requirements. And they're not funding this out of their pockets. They do not have the deep pockets, but they have the ability to get bank financing, one, and two, they have investors who are actually putting money into this.
I'm originally from Ottawa County, and I worked in construction many, many years ago as their my own fans and all of that and everything, so I still have connections back there. And that's why I was curious, because it's from Grand Haven, and that's, close my home territory, so
Yeah.
I've never heard of them, and, any of the projects that they have completed, whether it's in the area or here.
And I can tell you, they're not going to do this project until everything falls in place.
Can I just, I'm sorry, interrupt a
See
minute.
it?
Just as a Jeff Rowe, our former chair, is here, just a final comment, he has to leave.
I apologize, I wasn't here to speak during public comment initially, and unfortunately, I have another appointment I have to leave to get to, so I don't think, depending upon how long the conversation goes, I'd be able to stick around for the final comment. I don't know exactly kind of what's being kind of talked about, or other than what I read in the newspaper today, Eric. So, but I guess a couple of things that I think Mitch brought up. One, this developer, the city, and the DDA at very high level and very detailed conversations have been going on to back when John Rose was still here as community development director. And Travis and I met at that time numerous times with John Rose, with Mitch, with T, with the developer, talking about the projects, where we thought we could get support in this and where not. At a 30,000-foot view level, I think the important thing to keep in mind as you guys look at this, I guess, from what the basics I understand what some of the concerns are, is that, again, this has been over a 2-year process to get to this point today. Not that we want to say, if you don't do this, it's going to take another 2 years to get there, but please understand that somebody to come along and develop those buildings doesn't happen every day in a community like Manistee. And without the support that the state, the EDA would give up in terms of that TIF revenue, city support, et cetera, the return on investment, as Keith said, commented earlier, when we talked about why didn't the developer do specific types of investments. The return on investment on properties in Manistee is not attractive. It's just not relative to the rents that you can get today. I hope 5 years down the road, it's a very different conversation. But today, that's not the case. Today, rents relative to what I can charge are very low on a per square footage basis. The barrier to entry and starting a business in Manistee is not the cost of rent. That's certainly not a barrier here in Manistee. Yeah, it's finding foot traffic, it's finding a solid workforce, et cetera. All those things that many of us deal with on a day-to-day basis. But again, I think at a 30,000-foot view level, our job, your job as the DDA is to help promote revitalization. And this is a developer that's very interested in taking their resources, combining it with other resources, including public, and developing a blighted corner of Manistee that's been there for, well, North Channel's been challenged ever since I moved to the city 11 years ago, and certainly the River Park condos since they were left vacant by the previous developer. So I also think, and understand, I think, Barry, some of your concern, again, only what I've read, but in terms of, you know, the city taking advantage, and to some extent I say, I understand where you're going with that, but the DDA, the TIF capture that you're talking about, that we would give up in support of that, is fairly short-lived relative to when the project would be completed and when our current DDA sunsets. And then with the redevelopment plan that we're going to be, hopefully the board's entertaining and pushing forward with, our base is going to probably reset under that anyways. So how much of that TIF capture that we would actually be giving up in support of allowing the city to use that money in order to make necessary improvements, I don't know. But I think for the sake of cooperation, for the sake of being able to accomplish some other things down the road, I'd encourage the board to really consider the fact that I don't think you're probably giving up as much as you think you are relative to when the project's going to complete, when we would sunset, and what the rest of it would look like. And so again, without specifics, and for time, I don't know if there's any other questions of me, I'd be happy to attempt to answer them relative to what I can tell you, the conversations that have taken place before.
Just also one more, there was discussion of a project budget in the work session meeting earlier this week. Is that available just for review at all, just for information purposes?
He did say it exists, but.
Right.
Yeah,
I was just, because
there
it
is a
wasn't-
construction, I mean, we had to get construction costs, and there are soft costs and hard costs. And the total is for the River Park is about 1.9 million. We've been trying to bring it down. Actually, it started at 2.2, 2.3 million. And we've been trying to work with 2 construction firms to bring it down in order to make the numbers work. I mean, we have a pro forma, and the pro forma has the actual construction costs and estimated sales and rents, including both the 80% area medium income rent as well as the market rate. I think what makes this project at this time different from what it started, at least for River Park, back in 2006, is the number of units. They're a lot more marketable, and I would not have been involved in this if it wasn't for that, because I lived through the failure of the first developer and the failure of Jocelyn Cove development that had the same original idea, huge units that were not marketable. But at the time, everybody was not listening. They thought the market was going to grow forever.
But the same thing could happen with this project, because if we approve the brownfield project,
Yes.
there is still no guarantee that the developers can do their project, because they have all of those incentives that have to get through. And if one of them doesn't get through, you had already just said that the developer doesn't have a lot of his own money.
Sure.
So
It's
if
the
one
banks.
incentive does not get approved, then the whole project sits as it has sat for how many years?
Well,
So there is still no
Oh.
guarantee.
they're not going to be
But at
guaranteed.
that point,
No.
when there's no project,
Yeah.
There's no
it
project, there's no
it just pushes the can down the road a little bit.
So
I
the
mean-
brownfield project doesn't start until there's an agreement with the developer.
Yeah.
Well, the brownfield really doesn't matter
It's a plan.
until the project's done, because that's only the time you're gonna have any increments in tax base.
You're right.
And that's when King's things
Keep in
kick
mind
in.
what Jeff said, all the major projects, development that's happened downtown has been through a lot of different funding mechanisms. You look at the Bluefish, you look at the Vogue, in fact, the DDA loaned to the Vogue how much money without even looking at a business plan that they had. So,
This is by far the most complex
you
project
know,
that we have looked at.
And you're right, if everything doesn't fall in place, it cannot happen. But we have reasonable and high expectations. That's why it has taken 2 years of discussions, because we had many discussions with the state, with the MEDC primarily, and in the last 3 years, the MEDC has already removed some of the programs that were available 3 years ago, and they were included in a preliminary pro forma. However, the MEDC has been very supportive. The MISTA has been very supportive. The city has been very supportive. In discussions, both formal and informal, with individuals and communities within the DDA, I felt that everybody was in support, and that's why we're proceeding. My expectation in representing the developer is that this project is going to happen. Are we going to have some modifications? For River Park, I believe that the plan is pretty set. For the North Channel, the configuration and the types of businesses on the first floor may vary somewhat. The important thing about the North Channel building is that in order for the rest of the building to be rehabilitated, the first floor commercial has to happen. Not just because the developers desire, but because the MEDC will not support it without that commercial component. Yes, sir.
Is there like a plan B or a fail-safe mechanism that is or could be put in place in the event that this project should crater?
Well, I tell you, yes. If everything does not fall in place, then the properties are going to sit there.
And it also, I'd like to point out that that doesn't affect us then.
No.
Well, that was not.
Well, it affects
Well,
indirectly.
It does.
Indirectly.
I would say that's incorrect. It does affect
It
us.
only-
Yes.
I mean, because we need that area to develop
Yes.
as soon as possible. And
That
I
was
think,
kind of my point.
and I think that's, the fact that we're going through a deliberative process and asking questions doesn't mean that I don't think, I'm saying this blanketly, I think everyone around this table wants this project to work.
Absolutely.
Views it as being
Absolutely.
critical for, the continued progress of Manistee. We're not against, and I think you said it well, at least the quote that was in the paper at the Brownfield meeting. The DDA has long identified this as an important project in the area. We're all about the support or the success of this. We just are looking at the details of this particular project now and
Exactly.
trying to understand, does that make sense as it relates for our role as the DDA board? I mean, we're on this board to advance the interests of the DDA and our mission statement in that. Mayor and council and city staff, they have a different mission, and we need to figure out how all these things come together. So we're looking at it from a different perspective, but that's the role we play in this too. But we're definitely supportive of the concept and the project. We're just asking some questions about the details.
I disagree. I think the city and the DDA have the same mission, we just have different roles in achieving that mission.
Correct. Yeah. And, okay, we now have 45 minutes left in this meeting. Val, can we just go around initially and get comments from individuals and then go back to T? I would like as many questions as possible answered.
The other thing that I would say,
If there's been a
Bill.
study that shows that we need the additional condos, the commercial space there, is that part of the other study that was done?
No.
Is there any kind of assessment in the area and that we know that?
The developer has done, and they continue to do, starting 3 years ago, an assessment of the market. What sells, what doesn't, at what rates. And as John mentioned, John Bluthais last week, the River Park Place 2 years ago was targeted for all of it, for Mr. Rental Rehab Apartments, because the market was not supporting the sales of condos. And the thought was, as it is for North Channel now, North Channel is that with Mr. Grant assistance, the buildings or the portion of the buildings can be rehabilitated, rented out for a period of up to 5 years, with the expectation that the market will continue, the real estate market will continue to get better, and therefore at that time sell them as condos. That was the plan as of over close to a year ago for River Park. However, with pretty much on a monthly basis, they're looking at the real estate market they do. Maybe you can explain better, Brandon, but there is a way to figure out what is selling, not what is listed, but what sells at what rate, where those properties located in order to compare with this location, which is a good location, with the type of finishes and so on. So based on that continuing analysis of sales, that's how the decision was made that the apartments or the condos can be marketed at River Park. Not the same for the North Channel. The North Channel building at this point cannot support condos. We don't believe.
Does that answer your question, Ron?
Yes, it does.
Well, the question I have is just as the process goes, once we move forward with it, that the DDA will be able to be kept in the loop as to the progress of the project. Is that something that's
As much as or as little as you desire, and that's
One of the things that we talked about the other day, and I'm sorry to step out for a second, that the development agreement to me is kind of like that master document. That development agreement is the agreement which really binds the BRA, the DDA, not the DDA, excuse me, the BRA, the city, and the developer together to make these projects move forward. And I think there's a role to be involved with the DDA, an oversight, advisory role, but an involvement role. There's an absolute involvement role, I believe, that can occur, which it has not in the past. But I think that can occur moving forward. I think that's the thing that's really important about this project is that this seems really complex. But anywhere else across the state, this is how these deals are getting put together. There are multiple layers of incentives being layered for these projects. And I think this is going to be the norm moving forward compared to just like a signature building. If you think about it, even though the signature building took a long time to get done for the Bluefish, it was relatively, it was complicated, but it wasn't as complicated as this. Moving forward, I see developers layering and layering and layering and layering these levels of incentives to bring these projects to fruition. So I think that the level of complexity of this project is what you are going to see moving forward. This is going to be the norm, not the abnorm as we move forward, until somehow Manistee catches up in a market rating scenario with Grand Haven and Ottawa County as where you and I both came from previously. And respectfully, we're not there. By any stretch of the imagination, we're not there. We're not in Traverse. We're not in Traverse in that marketplace. We're definitely not Howland, Grand Haven marketplace. We're here. And I think that's a real important, I mean, I like here. Don't get me wrong. I really like here. But it's not from that economic development standpoint, even remotely close to those bookends north and south of us.
I should add something to that. The development agreement is going to be complex. I expect it's going to get even more complex. The reason is that some of the eligible activities and costs we include in the brownfield plan right now to be reimbursed with tax increments. Many of those activities could be funded with other sources, with grants, state, federal grants. So we're going to be looking at those. For example, a lot of the public infrastructure you see here can be funded with CDBG grants. Well, every time you bring a grant, there is a repayment issue or a loan. There is match, there is repayment of certain components. Same thing with loans. And so all of those things will have to be addressed at the development agreement. How is, let's say that right now we have $2.5 million in public infrastructure improvement. We get $1 million in CDBG grant for some of this work. There is a match. How is that match going to be repaid? Well, with TIF. We can use the TIF as the match. But then we have issues related to the timing. Who which expense, the match, the development expense gets paid first, in what sequence. So I can guarantee you that the development agreement is going to be more complex and will have to be amended as we are successful in bringing more state, federal dollars into this. But if we do not put them in the brownfield plan now as eligible activities, then it will be very difficult to add them later. It will require not just amendments of the brownfield plan, but also amendment of the 381 work plan with the state. So how are we going to go back to the state 3 years, 4 years from now and tell them that, well, we need this? They will say, you should have told us 3 years ago. So that's why this is so inclusive, this plan.
I've got a question on something we haven't talked about yet, although you did talk about it at the city council work session, is the Oprah and the NEZ tax abatements. I'm trying to understand what that means and how that works. I mean, because I think you described it as being not on the property, but on the structures, or I might have that backwards. And I think one is for 5 years, and the other is for 7 years. How much does that apply to the entire property tax base? And and ultimately, how much total dollars are we talking about there?
Okay. Both the OPRA, Obsolete Property Rehabilitation Act, that actually can apply to both buildings. However, because of another requirement of the OPRA program, we're only proposing for the North Channel. The reason is that OPRA tax abatement applies to commercial properties, including rentals. The neighborhood enterprise zone applies to owner-occupied rehabilitated buildings. Okay? Both of those can be awarded, abatements can be awarded for up to 15 years. Now, I take it back, NEZ is 12 years, over 15 years.
Correct.
The abatement applies to the increase of the incremental taxes on the real property, on the building. So, say in the case of the North Channel, the taxable value currently is, I can't remember what it is, Julie and I went through it.
It's 20-some thousand.
Yeah, let's say the property is 100,000. The current taxable value of the whole property. Approximately 15% is for the land, the real estate. 85% is for the buildings. With the redevelopment, the property taxable value is going to double. It's going to be 200,000. Okay? 15%, 30,000 is going to be the increase for the land, and the land, and the remaining is going to be for the buildings. The abatement would apply to the real property portion of the increase. The baseline for the building stays the same. The taxes are being collected. Actually, taxes will be collected from everything. But during abatement, taxes for the real estate will continue to be collected and go to the taxing jurisdictions as before. And the abatement will be on the increment for the real estate. I'm sorry, for the real property, the building.
Okay.
And in this case, we have proposed a 10-year abatement for the North Channel. And again, that was also part of the discussion with the prospective owners, operators of the commercial property. They really want that. And for the in the neighborhood enterprise zone abatement of 7 years for River Park. And 2 reasons for that. For the North Channel has to do with the actual pro forma, how the rents, because of the reduced rents due to the MISTA component, then the abatement will help with making the numbers. And for River Park is lesser time, and that is to be able to market the properties. It's for marketing purposes because that abatement only goes to the property owners. So the developer doesn't get any of that, of course. It will be the future buyers and owners that will
Some marketing.
get the abatement for the period that the council eventually approves.
So that would not go to the developer either.
No, the developer doesn't get any of these.
But on
If
the-
the developer keeps portion of the North Channel,
Until they're
Then-
sold, obviously they would be.
no,
Developers
No.
now.
not unless they're rented for River Park.
Okay.
For River Park, the developer, if the developer, say, keeps 5 units, the developer cannot get the abatement because they apply to owner occupied. And the developer cannot, my knowledge, cannot occupy 5 units.
That'd be hard.
Yeah.
But on the,
But if you buy some,
on the North Channel piece though, those abatements would go to the developer.
it will go to the developer or whoever owns the building or part of the building. So if the developer may sell 1 floor. Okay? As long as that 1 floor stays commercial rentals, then that owner gets the abatement. Even if it's 15 owners, if each unit is sold to people who will keep it as commercial, as income properties, then they qualify for that abatement. But if they live there, then they lose the abatement automatically.
Either directly or indirectly, it would go to the developer, because if you've got a tax abatement that's coming to the new owner for an X period of years, I'm sure you're gonna calculate in that to your sales price of, well, there's this extra value you're getting, it's worth more.
Actually, it is, excuse me, it is, even with the abatements, the North Channel building right now is barely breaking even.
I can believe that.
So the expectation is that the few points of return on the river channel is going to balance it. But again, keep in mind that when a developer is looking at these kinds of things, and I'm involved with other projects, you have to look at 5 to 10 years and looking at the return and under what conditions you can get that return. But the abatements will help with selling.
Thank you, that
Yeah.
explains them.
Yeah. I think he has his
Just real quick, sorry.
Yeah.
So the way this works is that the property is developed by the developer, and there's individual residential and commercial units that are sold off individually when you refer to owners, because the developer is actually ends up being the owner in the end, and then it's just.
No, for River Park, they're going to be sold.
It's kind of many, right?
It's going to be,
Okay.
it's Salcom.
Residential condos.
Yes.
Okay.
For River Park, for North Channel, the first floor most likely is going to be sold to the businesses. Those businesses will have the tax abatement if awarded. The apartments, the developer most likely will keep the second floor apartments, the Mista apartments, because being the recipient of the grant, actually the city is the recipient technically, but it does it on behalf of the developer, then the developer has to keep the property for up to 5 years and rent it
Okay.
with an 80%.
80%.
As a condo association,
Um,
or not?
Events, well,
Okay.
actually, if there is more than one owners, there will have to be some kind of condo association.
Oh, okay.
Okay, it will have to be.
For the
Now, it
building.
may be 3 owners in the condo association. I'm talking about North Channel right
Yes.
now.
Yeah.
The River Park is going to be, of course, condo association, yes.
Okay, gotcha. So my follow-up question from the NEC was, what portion of the overall project, roughly 7 million, is publicly financed, basically whether it be through brownfield, whether it be through state grants, various programs, and what is privately financed?
Okay. I'm looking at some numbers here. The value of the 2 abatements, if they are awarded, are 2, and assuming that the abatements are actually taken, because if something changes, if someone rents River Park, you buy 2 units at River Park, and you decide not to live there, then they lose their abatement. But if all of the abatements are used as planned, then the total abatement is around 400,000. The value of the abatements for the 7 and 10 years. In my experience, because I'm involved with the former state hospital in Traverse City, where there were a number of abatements, a number of tax credits. Only about 40%, 35 to 40% of the credits and the abatements were actually taken, even though everything was awarded. Again, because ownership changes. The moment that ownership changes, then people lose their abatements. So the abatement is the maximum number. We're still talking with MEDC about how much they will be able to support the elimination of light from both buildings. Actually, the city will be the applicant. I've been hearing a couple of different things for planning purposes. We're looking at maybe 800 between the 2 buildings combined.
800,000.
800,000, yeah.
But I also heard you say earlier that some of the abatements, NEZ over for sure, were based upon a reached settlement agreement between council and the developer,
Yes.
which would lead me to believe that there's some room for conversation.
There's always room for conversation.
Thank you. I just think that's important.
The city,
You don't have to explain it.
No.
We're good.
we always have, this is very common.
I know.
The
We're
city
good.
will be looking at the numbers.
Of course.
We have to justify why. Yeah. So,
T, in the interest of time, we have 20 minutes left till our magic noon went by, whereby everyone leaves.
Valerie, did you have a question?
I
Because
have
it
one
looked
more
like you were
question
going to
about
ask
how we
one.
were going to finance the public developer portion, the 2.5, that's the city's, right? And will that be financed, or it sounds like we also talked about some grants, right?
Go ahead, Jeff.
When you look at that list of public infrastructure, we don't have cash to pay for any of those projects. But those are all projects that is needed by the city and have direct benefits to the development. And so we will have to finance, if this project moves forward, we'll have to finance those. but the captured taxes are a way for us to get reimbursed and pay for those financing costs.
Backstop.
And this is the world that we're in today. If you look at the recent commercial developments in Manistee, they've all got some component of infrastructure tied to them. When the Family Fair store was constructed, they rebuilt 12th Street and upgraded the utilities there on their dime. That was part of the negotiation. When Reeve Riley built the terminal tank there and the agreement was saying there was infrastructure components, we applied for grant money from the state. Reeve Riley paid for the match of that grant money to improve the roadways out in front. The same thing with Amtech. Amtech got some abatements on their taxes, but they also pledged money towards improving the roads within the industrial park. We took that pledged money, we went out and found grants, and we were able to improve Golashevsky, Veterans Oak Grove, and then eventually Monroe Street, all with that. So, you know, every time one of these developments happen, there's a tie-in with the public infrastructure. And so this is all trying to leverage as much as we can.
Jeff, I want to emphasize, however, what you said, these two items and portion of these, the sanitary sewer, the water main, and the Sword Street stabilization are absolutely required, necessary for the project to proceed.
Right.
There is no water main coming across one, and Sword Street has to be stabilized in order to excavate the hill in order to create parking.
Right.
Without that, we cannot have parking. That puts extra burden on across the street. The sanitary sewer, as I said, part of that is under the building.
Well, the sanitary sewer is actually the interceptor line on the north side. So that pipeline takes all the flows from the north side, the prison, the hospital, everything out that way. When Joslyn Cove was constructed, the city, they had to pay for a capacity study, and it showed that the pump station and that line are under capacity, and there's also structural issues with it. So if you start adding more users to it, it impacts negatively that infrastructure. It's also underneath the building's cantilevered over it. So this has been on our radar for 6 years, trying to find a way to pay for it, because it's necessary. Right now, neither one of those buildings has water service to them, and so we actually have to do a short main extension just to get them water, and then looping helps the fire suppression for both of those. So the project really is in need of that water main. The Short Street stabilization, if you drive up Short Street, we've got guardrail on it, but it's leaning, and it's leaning even though the slopes are using private property there.
It is.
But in order for us to make that road safe, we would have to use some of the private property. So there's definitely a need and a connection there. And then the road that works, you know, in front of them, we always need to keep the infrastructure up. And there's a direct benefit for improving some of the roadways within the DDA district.
I was thinking yesterday, I heard about the discussion on the streets, and I wish we had redevelopment projects like that in areas where streets need improvement, because that's a way to support street improvements. Because, of course, in addition to the local tax capture, the main thing is that we get the state tax capture that the state then reimburses the schools. So
Right.
essentially, it's a way to bring state funds.
We are now counting down 15 minutes. This has been, I think, very informative, very productive. I would like to throw out to the board a motion to proceed. The motion, if the board is in concurrence, would be to approve the brownfield plan dated July 2014, developed by the Authority for the South Washington Area Redevelopment Project.
Chair, I think your motion needs to include in the TIF capture. Really, that's the only reason you approve.
As an addition.
Approval of the BRA plan, which is captured today.
Okay, if that's how you see it, but normally
Okay.
And what we're approving is foregoing our tip
You're
capture
right.
and allowing
Would
DRA
someone
capture.
help me with the proper verbiage for Diana and for all of us?
I think as you stated, the only thing I would add is approve the brownfield plan and the associated TIF capture by the brownfield authority. That's all.
Thank you.
I guess I would make a motion that the DDA approve the brownfield redevelopment plan as stated, which includes capture and tip of that brownfield redevelopment.
Thank you.
I'll second.
Thank you.
Is there any discussion?
Right. Any more discussion, or let's do a roll call?
Well,
I'm
isn't
sorry,
that
Barry.
discussion?
Well, there is discussion.
There is discussion, I'm
It's
sorry.
Rod's. I would have made a motion similar to that, but I would have added one stipulation, that the DDA be a signatory party to the development agreement as a condition of us foregoing our tip. So that we are involved in a significant way in the decision process going forward, as opposed to the motion on the table right now basically is our last formal participation in this process.
All right.
Is that an amended motion now?
I'm just, we're discussing, so I wanna, I mean, if no one else believes that's feasible or even possible, then there's no reason to amend the motion, but.
I guess I don't understand the benefit.
Or the need for,
Well, I'll give an example of something that I was gonna ask, but is part of the brownfield plan talks about extending the Riverwalk. I question that because we've all heard about the Alaska Bridge to Nowhere. I feel like we're funding a Riverwalk to nowhere that realistically, there's not a lot of attraction to it because you can walk down to the end and then maybe walk back. Is that really something that is important to us? I think we have bigger issues just getting our existing Riverwalk utilized as opposed to investing dollars in additional Riverwalks that then someone in the future has to pay to maintain. We're having those conversations about how we're going to maintain what we currently have. Do we need more Riverwalk? Is that a priority? I don't know. It's on the plan. I think we should be involved, and that I believe in a significant way, but we'll be involved. I mean, I'm not doubting our involvement in these projects. You know, some of the streetscaping components, so there are aspects of this plan that I think we have more than a casual interest in, and that's why I think it would make sense for us to be part of the development plan.
There's a motion on the floor. Would you like to amend it?
I would like to amend it to actually include Barry's language or Barry's proposal. I think that would be fair.
Is there-
except holding the motion.
Oh, because
I guess I don't see that. I don't know where, I didn't see anywhere in there where they're extending a Riverwalk. There is a Riverwalk there.
Discussion.
It's in there,
it was,
Yeah, there is the Riverwalk to extend in front of us.
and I think it's $150,000 on the brownfield plan.
And you also stated that you want to see a plan for development that brought people down. And now,
I think it kind of goes back to what I was originally talking about, to include the DDA in the project, in the progress of it.
Well, Mitch said at our meeting on Wednesday that we could do that, right, Mitch?
I said that I would be happy to involve the DDA and, to be involved in the process and bringing you involved with that and making sure that you're familiar with the language and stuff like that. I hadn't contemplated making you a signatory to that, but I had absolutely contemplated involving the DDA in the discussions, the conversations, getting their feedback and input on the development agreement to ensure that there weren't items that internally at staff that we had missed. Absolutely. I would see the DDA to be at a very, very high level of importance of reviewing of the documents to ensure that we're not missing topics. I mean, I would think that that would be something that we absolutely would want to do.
And I guess
That's what
my other
That's
issue
what I was.
is,
Exactly.
is the DDA really, its role is to nitpick $150,000 of a development plan over millions of dollars that's being developed? Is that really our role?
I think it's.
There's an amendment right now that's on the floor.
No, it's not. There
I
was-
mean, there was a motion for an amendment, but it's just,
But there was no
if
support.
there's no support,
I'll support
I'll
it.
support it.
okay, you're gonna support that. Now there's discussion on that amendment.
No, there's some key words in there. Signatory was one, or partner. Are they mutually exclusive, or are they?
Well, since you made the amendment, what were you thinking? As I was discussing it under the previous motion, I was thinking signatory, and I think that you heard me correctly.
Okay.
But that may not be what you intended.
Well,
It should be, since you
signatory-
made the amendment, it should be what you intended.
Yeah, I would say that to be partner, and much in the way that Mitch has discussed. Signatory, that means we gotta go back and redo documents and everything for the most part of it.
I'd be happy to have a DDA appointed individual, whether it be the director or chair or someone else, to actually sit in on and be part of that team of staff on the drafting of the development agreement. I have no, normally, quite frankly, I do actually have an issue with it. Normally, I wouldn't be making those statements and offering that up, because what it does is it slows the process down immeasurably, depending on who gets on that board. It can slow the process down significantly. But I recognize fully the level of importance that you see and involved in that. So I'm happy to take that extra time to ensure that we're all moving in the same direction. It's very similar, in my opinion, to what we talked about less than 2 days ago with the other communities that wanted to become a select Main Street community. To me, it's all about partnership and collaboration, and how can we continue to work together and ensure we're moving forward on mutually beneficial projects. And if that's one step that we need to take, I'm happy to do so.
That would be my proposed amendment, is partner. I think that's a happy medium.
But not assignment.
Right.
So
Not
Tom,
Not
assignment.
signatory.
restate, will you just please restate that
I
amendment?
restate the amendment to the motion that would make the DDA a partner in the project, much of how Barry.
Which would be defined as sitting in on meetings, being privy to all the discussion,
Correct.
but not a signer on the actual agreement itself.
So, like Mitch said, having, either the executive director or Sherry is
Mitch suggested team member as,
team member,
I'm just
yes.
calling it development. I always say everything, I keep using that term. It's just a matter of, there's going to be an internal number of staff members who quite frankly are going to be the finance director, myself, Jeff McCullough, and the other individual that's going to be kept up to speed on this on a weekly basis, if not more often, is Mayor Kenny. It's these projects, in my opinion, that the way they go the smoothest is Mayor Kenny and I have weekly meetings together every Thursday morning, and she would be an instrumental part also of that discussion to make sure that we're not missing something from that high level scenario. So I'm just saying, from a staff level, involving another individual from the DDA at a staff level for the development and creation of this document. It's not like we're going to create this document from scratch. We're going to take someone else's document and we're going to modify it for our needs. But to have another set of eyes to ensure we're not missing something, that's awesome.
Absolutely.
one
That's
final
exactly-
comment by team
Awesome.
under discussion, and then we will vote on the amendment.
Actually, on behalf of the development team, I would welcome what is proposing for a couple of reasons. It's going to happen anyway. The DDA will be involved maybe at the staff level And the DDA has to, will have to be supporting the various grant applications and various activities. For example, redevelopment liquor licenses.
He
So,
can actually-
yes, I would.
No,
So we support it.
Rachel is
Is
blocking.
there a call? Is there a
Rachel's
call to question
flashing
on
out.
this amendment?
I would like to call to question the amendment and
The amendment first, and then we'll come back to
Correct. Are we all clear on the verbiage once more of the amendment?
That we're a team member,
Team member.
that we are privy to coming to the meetings, privy to discussion of the agreement, not a sign-or.
But that's not,
But the motion is that
Right.
TDA approves the brownfield redevelopment
We have,
with, including the TIF capture for that development and being a partner within those discussions.
Then you
As-
change your motion.
the amendment, we have to first on vote on the amendment to that. And
Well,
then-
we have to know what the amendment is.
He
before
can
we
withdraw,
vote
he
on
can
it.
withdraw his amendment and
That's-
then
I agree with you. Let's withdraw your amendment and have Colleen restate the motion to incorporate that,
Okay.
okay? And whoever supported the amendment.
I'll
Right.
re-motion that the DDA approve the brownfield redevelopment agreement,
Okay.
which includes the TIF capture for that project.
Correct.
Being a partner in the negotiations and discussions of such development.
Perfect.
I support.
Thank you, thank you. Please call the roll, Diana.
Bob,
yes.
Bergstrom,
Yes.
Estabrook,
Yes.
Kenny,
Yes.
Lynn,
Say no.
Moore,
Yes.
Wyatt,
Yes.
motion passes.
Rachel, thank you. Whoever else has to leave by noon. Thank you.
Leave by noon, 1-4 now.
Any other comments? Thank you, everybody. I especially appreciate the due diligence. It was truly going through it so there's a better understanding. We're adjourned if there is no. I'm sorry.
Yeah, public comment?
Public comment. I apologize.
We have Jeff.
Hearing none.
I would just like to say that I have some very grave concerns about this process. I was very happy to see that Barry finally seemed to see his way clear. But I would prefer to address those with you personally. You're the
With
chair.
Issues?
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't think that it's appropriate for public discussion.
Can we state who?
Okay.
My name is Julie Beardsley, I'm the city assessor.
Oh, great.
Okay. Thank you, Julia.
Thank you. So if you could find some time to meet with me privately, I would really appreciate that. Okay.
I'll talk to you after the meeting and we'll do that.
Okay. I called you this morning, but I missed you.
I was already gone. Thank you, Julie. Any other public comment? Else, thank you, everybody. We're adjourned.